Okay guys, so we're going to take a look at After Effects a little bit. So when you open it up, this is what you should get. You might get another little button that looks like this, if it'll load. This is your home button, your home screen here. Pretty much all I have done is just hit New Project, and it just opens it up as something completely empty. So we're going to talk about the interface of After Effects. After Effects is a really powerful program. It lets you do things for visual effects, editing, all sorts of really cool things that you can do in here. We're not going to touch too much on things today, but we are going to take a look at a couple of different things. First off, we're going to take a look at the overall interface. So currently I'm in this default type of window. There's also learning, standard, small, libraries, as well as color effects, a minimal, painting, text, tracking, and an edit. I personally like the default. You can switch between whichever one that's most comfortable for you. I have been known to switch between editing and color and standard. It just really depends on what you're working on. So first thing we're going to do is let's take a look at files. This is where you can create a new project. You can also import cinema files, Photoshops, things like that. You can open projects, close, save, import. I'm going to go ahead and not import anything quite yet, but we will soon. You can also export from here. That will be its own video. You can also add dynamic links between Premiere and here. It doesn't always work. I think they have fixed it in the newest version. My computer currently doesn't have the newest update, but if yours does have the 2021, I think they have gotten that nice and fixed. And then you can also come over here to your project settings. These are just your overall settings for your project that you can change as needed. We also have our edit here. You can change and undo. You can look at your history states. You can cut, copy, and paste. You can duplicate layers. You can also purge your cache if you start to run a little bit slow. This is really nice to know. You just purge it, gets rid of everything so that your After Effects here can start from scratch. You can also look at team projects, templates, preferences, which we will look at in a second, and change things about your overall account. So I'm going to come over here to preferences and go general. Pretty much all of these are going to be pretty standard. We're not really going to change too much. This is just all of your general settings here. You've got your preview settings, display settings, your import settings. You can change how things are sequenced. Do you want 30 frames per second? You can change that to 24, that sort of thing. Your output, this is your sequence output settings. Pretty much the standard on here is going to be pretty nice. Your guides and grids are all personal preference. You can change these colors to be whatever you like. It's all personal preference here. Your labels are also pretty personal preference. Do you want your composition to come in as this sandstone color? Video would be aqua, that sort of thing. If you're like, no, I really want my composition to come in as that green, you can come down here, change that to green. And when you import something down here as a composition, it will be green, which you would be able to see over here. Your media and cache disk, this is another really important thing to change. You do want to make sure that you change your folder to be a nice temp folder. So I like to put my temp folder on my D drive. Come down here, I have this little temp here. I'm going to select that. If it's got anything in it, it will ask you to empty it. I highly recommend emptying your cache anytime you open up After Effects. That way, if you do change something in here, you're not accidentally writing over something, you're creating something new. I'm going to do that same thing to this database one here. I'm going to come over here, put it in this temp folder, and it'll be like, hey, do you want to move stuff or delete it? I highly recommend deleting it. Any cache that you would have, you could automatically recreate. Same for here, choose a folder, same thing, this temp right here. And I'm just going to clean my database and cache. It goes pretty quick. If you do have a lot of cache, it can take a while, so just be aware. But most times, just cleaning these out will improve your overall performance inside of your After Effects. Your video preview, if you have Mercury Transmit enabled, pretty much that's just a playback type. If you notice your computer's running really slow or it's crashing, try turning off this Mercury Transmit. It should help a little bit. My computer here is a little older as compared to the ones we have at the DMC, so I have this turned off so it runs a little bit better. Your appearance is personal preference. Do you like a darker background or a lighter background? Do you want your highlight color to be normal, darker, or brighter? And then do you want your focus to be darker or brighter, so you can see the outline here is darker or brighter. You can also change your new project template. Having this turned off just comes in as a standard. It's not a templated version. We also have your autosave. I currently have mine turned on. However, if you notice it's starting to crash your After Effects or things get a little slow, you can turn that off. Just you got to remember to save manually. Your memory, this is how much RAM is being reserved. Specifically for After Effects, Premiere does the exact same thing. Currently, it's reserving only 6 gigs of RAM for the entire rest of my computer. If you need to change that higher or lower to make your computer run smoother, please do so. Your audio hardware, this is also the same as what you can find inside of Premiere. If you are playing something in here and you notice that on one computer you had audio but on a different computer you don't, just double check this default output here. It might be looking for a speaker that doesn't exist on that computer. Your output mapping, this is just what are you hearing on your left and your right side. Your sync settings, how are you syncing to your account. Your type, are you having Latin engines for your text type, or do you need South Asian, Middle Eastern? And then if you write anything in a script, this is how you can tell what your script is going to look like. I highly recommend, if you like scripting, there's a whole bunch of stuff here inside of After Effects you can use. And this is what you would do to enable this and make it look how you need it to look. So I'm just going to hit OK. And then we have a couple of other things in here we want to look at. So under composition, this is our composition, all of our composition stuff in here. I'm going to create a new composition. I'm just going to name this demo. And here we have our preset is that HDTV 1080 by 24 frames a second. This is the frame rate and the size that we are mostly using in our class. It's that 16 by 9, 200 DPI. Pretty standard. You can change your duration. This is how long your timeline is going to last. For me, in this example, 10 seconds right here. Milliseconds, seconds, minutes, hours. 10 seconds is pretty standard, but the default is 30, so if you do need to change your timing down, just take it down here as needed. You can also change your background color. No matter what color you choose in here, I'm going to leave mine standard at black. No matter what color you have in here, it is a invisible background. So it is not going to be rendered. So regardless of what color you choose, if you choose pink and you do something with like a black text, you will render out solid black because that background color is invisible to the renderer. So just be aware of that. And I'm going to hit OK. So you can see I made a new composition. As I mentioned earlier, it comes in as this green color because that is the color I changed my compositions to. We can also look at layers here, so we can do new layers. You can make text, solid colors, a light, a virtual camera, a null object, a shape, an adjustment layer, a content-aware fill. This pretty much looks at one frame to the next frame and sees what the differences are, a Photoshop file, and a Cinema file. For right now, I'm just going to make a solid, and I'm going to make it a nice, like, kind of palish bluish color. And it's going to come in as that 1920 by 1080 aspect ratio. And we can also change this name, so I'm going to call it light blue solid. Tell that OK. So now I have this light blue solid that I can scale and shift around as needed. If you have a background color that you want to render out, this is how you would want to do that. So from here, inside of our layer, we can look at our settings of our solid. So if we did need to change that color, this is where we can do so. Cancel. We can also add a mask to here, which we are not going to worry about right now. We can add a switch. We can change the time, frame blending, add some 3D, put some markers on here. This will allow you to make notes inside of your timeline. And do all sorts of things inside of here, including making a pre-compose, which is a composition within a composition. We also have all of our effects. Should we need any of these, we can find them here, but they're also over here in their own little setting right here, so you don't always have to come up to effect. You can also come over here. It will do a nice little loading animation with your scroll wheel, and then these are all the effects you can use. We also have animations. You can create presets for animations. You can browse them. You can change how things interact. We will have a full day just going over animation inside of After Effects. We then have view. How are you viewing your composition? So you can see I can show guides, lock things, import things. I can show a grid in here. We also have our window. This will allow us to see our workspaces. As I said, I'm in default. You can find these here or click these little double arrows to see other ones. But these are also all of your little boxes, your little toolkits here. So we have Align, Audio, all of these can be found over here, down here, or up here. And then we have Help, which is pretty standard. Should you need anything or need to log out, you can do that here. So from here, we have our composition. It automatically shows up down here as our timeline. We can add a new composition by clicking this little button here. We can add a new folder if we have a whole bunch of different video files or a bunch of different color corrections. We can add a new folder to keep those in check. We can also delete things as needed. As you can see, my solid color here came in as its own folder. So if I were to create more, I could put them under here. And then down to our actual timeline here, you see it's got this blue barrier all the way around it. When you go to export, it is very important to make sure this is clicked. If you're going to do, so it has this barrier. If you're going to do anything in here and want it to play properly, make sure that you do have this. That way if you click space, it actually plays correctly. So we have our little demo timeline here. We have our turn off and on visibility. So currently I only have my light blue solid in here. We have our audio. I don't have any, but should we have any, we could click this little icon that's similar to the eye right here. There's nothing there to turn off and on audio. We have our solo. So if we had multiple layers, it would solo, so all we see is the one. We can lock it to change it so that we can't select or change anything about it. We then have our shy. Pretty much what this is it looks like a little Squidward. It just makes it so that you can only interact with the one layer. We also have our comp layer right here. You can see it says it changes and rasterizes things. So should you bring in any vector, you might need to use that to get a better quality image. We then have our sampling. If we change this, it will change the quality of our image. So if you bring an image in and it's a little pixelated, try clicking on that and it might fix it. We then have our effects. Should we have any effects on our layer here? So if I were to come over here and let's say put a distort lens onto our image, you'll see it makes it all nice and circle. I get access to this little effect here and I can turn that off and on as needed. So then we have our overall motion blur. So if I have this on and it moves, I can toggle on this motion blur to get it to act with a bit of blur to make it look a bit more realistic. We then have our toggle off and on adjustment layers. These are all adjustment layers that are the same thing as what is inside of Photoshop, but they are all found over here inside of the effects instead of being their own little thing. You can just search for it here and it will pop up. We also have this little 3D layer button. It looks like a little 3D box. This allows us to move things in 3D space. We also have our parent and linking section. So we have a little pilly whip or pick whip. It allows you to click and drag to other objects. So if we wanted to parent this solid into a different object, we could pilly whip it to it. Since there's nothing, we get this little kind of fun animation. There's nothing for it to parent to. So if we had a camera that was moving in here and wanted this light blue solid to move with it, we could parent it to it. Okay, so from here, we also have our graph editor button. We will have a day when we do the animation where we have quite a bit of time that we'll look in there. But other than that, we have our time slider. We can click this little nub here and drag it. You can see automatically I got this green bar that goes across. This green bar means it is rendering in real time. It is fully cached. So if I come up here to preview, you'll see that I have this little cache before playback. What is my range? Where am I playing from? If caching, play only cached frames. having this green bar will just allow you to see things at real time. If it comes in as yellow or red or isn't there at all, you might not be playing at full frame back, and you may or may not need to toggle this cache before playback. If you come up here, you'll see I have my project settings. I also have my effects control since I added that CC lens. I can just click on that and hit delete and it will remove itself. I can also come and toggle these little arrows here if I have extra things in there. This little button here is our home. Like I said, this will bring up that main menu screen. I can just exit back out of that. This little button here is our selection tool, or V on the keyboard for victory. It's the same as Photoshop. It'll allow you to move things in your space, allow you to click things on the timeline. It's your overall basic tool. We also have our hand tool. This is our move tool. It allows us to move our objects here in 3D space, so we can zoom in with our scroll wheel and shift around so that we can see exact spots in our timeline and in our overall composition. We have our zoom tool, or the scroll wheel, so you can zoom in, clicking and dragging. If you hold down Alt, it does the opposite. I personally prefer using the scroll wheel and the space bar to access the hand instead of clicking it, but that is all personal preference. As you notice though, I can't rotate any of my items in here. It automatically comes in with these little arrows because I'm in 3D space. If I were to get rid of those, it would disappear. But if I toggle this little next button or the rotation tool, I can click and rotate pretty much in any axis that I want, just because I am in this 3D space with this little box here. If I turn that off, I can only rotate rightsies, leftsies. We then have our camera layer. We're not going to worry about this because we're going to make our own digital camera. You can also pan behind. This works really well for if you have a lot of things in 3D space. You can create shapes. So I'm just going to create 3 shapes. Now if you notice, it automatically created 3 different masks on my light blue solid. This is because I had my light blue solid selected. If we just wanted some shapes, so if I wanted some little red boxes, I could click here and it will make me 3 boxes. We will be having a day where we talk about masks, but pretty much you can do the same thing on your solid and it will create masks in the shape that you choose. We then have our pen tool. This also works the same way as our shape. So if we click away and draw a little line like the pen tool inside of Photoshop, we can create a really interesting little shape, get it to do and look how we want, like so. It makes its own shape layer, or if we have something clicked like our light blue solid, we can click here and make another light blue shape. We also have our text tool. We can click and say hello. Hello there. Have that wherever we want. You can see it makes our own text layer. I can come over here with our selection or V tool, move this around to put it where we need it to be. We also have a painting brush tool. This is really good for painting out individual spots. We have a clone stamp tool. Both of these work exactly how they do inside of Photoshop, with a little twist because things are moving. It only does it per frame. And then we also have an eraser tool for if you mess up. We also have a roto brush tool. This kind of works like all of these kind of combined. Just use sparingly, and it does do it frame by frame. And then we have this puppet tool. The next video that you are going to see is going to be specifically about how to use this. So that is all that you really need to know for right now on the After Effects basic buttons.